let's begin. This week's Parsha begins in chapter 13 in the middle and in verse 17 of 13. This is the Parshat Beshalach. The Exodus began last week, and this is really the continuation as Bnei Israel leave, and there are some fundamental ideas of Hashem's perspective of our growth and who we are, and very powerful lessons. Obviously, there's the Exodus, the crossing of the sea, the Egyptians coming after them, the splitting of the sea, the Egyptians drowning in the sea. Then they come to the desert. There's nothing to drink. They find bitter water, and that gets healed. They have nothing to eat, and they get the manna. There's nothing to drink, and they have the well of Miriam, the rock, and then ultimately the battle with Amalek, which is, as the verse says, an eternal battle for the throne of God, the eternal battle for good and evil. So that's the overview of the Parsha. Some fundamentals such as the manna, the be'er, the well of Miriam, water, the crossing of the sea, the song at the sea, the shirayam, some very deep things. We'll try and touch a little bit on each one of these topics. The Parsha begins, Vayhi Beshalach Paro es ha'am, and it was when Paro sent the nation out. And again, this is chapter 13, verse 17. V'lo nacham Elokim derech eretz Pelishtim. And God did not guide them in the path to the land of the Philistines, of the Pelishtim. Ki karovhu, because it's too close. Right? Counterintuitive. They've been enslaved. They've had such a hard time. They can make it finally to their land and rest. And Hashem says, no, I'm not going to take them to the land because it's too close. Ki karovu. Why? Ki amar Elokim. Because Elokim said, pen yinachem ha'am, perhaps the people will regret berot HaMelchama when they see a war, v'shavu Mitzrayim, and they will return to Mitzrayim. Now, first of all, I want to note that twice this verse, as talking about it, does not mention Hashem, but Elokim. Not the name that we say is of loving kindness and saving and changing nature, but rather the God of nature and justice, and the God that makes demands of us. The reasoning here is because, these slaves, if they come and encounter a challenge, they see war, they're just going to run back to slavery. Now, that in and of itself is, a question. Why would they run back to slavery? What's so bad about this, right? We can talk about that in a moment. But I would ask a bigger question. The God who could make plagues and free them from Egypt can save them from battles and just bring them straight into the land and let them rest. They've had such a difficult time. Let them come to a place of rest. Why make this? Oh, well, they're going to encounter some battles, and they're going to regret leaving. They're going to chicken out, and they're going to go back. And so we can't do that. And this is a fundamental idea about the need for growth and Hashem's purpose for us in the world. We could be gifted everything on a silver platter. And when we get that, we won't have to challenge. We won't have to face anything difficult. But then it would be purposeless. That's the name Elokim, Hashem of justice, meaning that demanding of us to grow, to do things in response to the challenges. Hashem can bubble wrap us and shield us from the challenges, but then how do we grow? How do we become who we are? And this is a glimpse that Hashem is showing Bnei Israel the whole purpose of their experience up until this point. we need to be able to encounter challenges and face them and overcome them, and that's how we grow. And if it's too easy, if it's too close, we will chicken out. And especially as people coming from slavery, where they never had to face choice challenges. Of course, it was very challenging, but all the choices were made for them. You didn't have a choice. You don't have a say in the matter. You're a slave. And so Bnei Israel never had the opportunity to face something and choose to remain in place and overcome it. That in and of itself is a crucial growth for the people. And so Hashem says, we're not going to take Bnei Israel the quick way to the Philistines. To grant it to them without a challenge, without a battle, they'll never grow. Slave people who never had to face a challenge and choose will never learn to choose. And so Bnei Israel, first and foremost, needed to face challenge upon challenge upon challenge to grow and become people of our own, to be able to withstand challenges and become people who are choosing the goodness we do. In order to do that, we have to face the challenges, but then we may turn back. And so Elohim, again, God who wants us to do things and grow within nature and not be handed as a gift, says you can't go derech eretz pelishtim, the short way, because it's too close. And when you face those challenges, you may end up turning around. We're going to take it the long way around into the desert. And each one of the steps that we're going to see in the parsha are going to teach these people, to teach us that we can grow and we ought to grow through challenges, through facing the challenges, through looking at it squarely in the eye and saying, I can do this. I can overcome this. I will survive, and learning how to do every one of these steps. So we will point out some of the growth or aspects or the demands Torah is making of them and of us and what we learn from this. But this is the first message of the Exodus is it's not an easy challenge. And therefore you have to be willing and ready to face it at every step. And running back, turning back and running away from the challenges, circumventing the challenges is not a way to grow. We have had so many challenges throughout our history. And we have them today. We don't seek to be shielded from the challenges. We seek to stand up to them and grow from them. That's the key. The key is that we will learn to be better people, to grow and be stronger on account of on account of what it is we have and who we are. I remember the first time I went to a ball game. It was at Shea Stadium in New York, a Met game. It was my brother and I and a family friend and his parents. And multiple times throughout the game, people threw pennies at us. And I was probably 8, 9-year-old kid, and I didn't even know what it meant. But my friend's parent was there and said, they don't understand who we are, and so that's why they're tossing that. It's okay. We know who we are. I didn't understand what the anti-Semitic act was at the time, but I knew it wasn't meant as something nice. And I learned that that's okay. That's okay. I know who I am, and that's enough. I can grow with that. I can shrug this off. Doesn't mean that was wrong. No. Sorry, that what the people did was wrong. Of course. Doesn't mean that we should ignore it. No. But should we ignore it in as much as it's not going to change who we are and break us? Absolutely. And that's the lesson here. We have to be able to face the issues and not run away. And if there's an easy escape route, especially for people that never face the challenge, like slaves, not a challenge that they had a choice about, right? Therefore, it was necessary to take it on a route where the lessons, the training, is going to be done in a way that we have to face it and learn from it. And so Hashem took him in a roundabout way through the desert, through Yam Suf. And they came up, in the literal sense, it means they came up out of Egypt with ammunition. It's an odd thing because as slaves, they never had training in that. They could not have had training. But nevertheless, that's a part of the training in becoming in understanding self and be able to face. Take something that you will be able to grow with or protect yourself with. Verse 19, Vayikach Moshe es atzmos Yosef imo. And Moshe, he took the bones of Yosef along with him because Yosef made him take an oath that they will take them out when they leave. He said, look, God's going to remember you and take you out. And when he does, you need to take me and my brothers out to be buried in Israel. Take them out with you. And the Midrash says on this, Moshe took the bones of Yosef to teach us something very important. This is a vital lesson to us. Moshe, the verse says, Chacham lev yikach mitzvos. Somebody who is wise in the heart will take mitzvahs, will take a mitzvah. If you think about the mayhem, if you think about the energy that's going on, Bnei Yisrael need to leave. Hundreds and hundreds of thousands of people, actually millions of people, right? An enormous amount of people, 600,000 men between the ages of 20 and 60, so that equal amount of women plus the elderly plus children, and we're talking about millions of people needing to go out with their animals, with all of their possessions that they now got from the Egyptians. And Moshe is their leader, but he didn't forget something crucial. He knew that there's a mitzvah to be done, and he took his heart and mind set to it to do the mitzvah. Chacham lev yikach mitzvah. Somebody wise of the heart will take a mitzvah. It's a lesson to us. There are times that are tumultuous. There are times that are just, we're not in a sense of stability. And therefore we lose our sense of what we need to do. This verse teaches us Moshe did not forget. He had a mission. He knew there was a mitzvah to do. And all of the balagan in Hebrew, right? All of the tumult didn't make him falter, didn't make him forget what it is he meant to do. He went and he took the grave of Yosef, the bones of Yosef, and he brought them up with him. This is a lesson for us that we need to keep our mind focused even when times are challenging.
Rabbi, I have a question.
Yeah.
Is it common, I would imagine it's uncommon, to, I guess, dig up the grave of somebody and rebury them in Israel? Or did Moshe only do that because Yosef asked him to do it? Like if we were to do that to some big rabbi, I feel like that would be pretty disrespectful to their...
Great question, Spencer. It is generally seen as disrespectful or not right for the deceased to disturb their grave, unless it was a conditional from the start.
Okay, so if
it's also likely that Yosef was, sorry?
Oh, I was just going to say, so if they had specifically asked for it, at some
correct.
Point? Okay.
Yeah, Yosef, as the verse says in 19, because he'd made them take an oath that when God remembers you and takes you out of Egypt, remember to take my bones with you. So that was an oath he made them take. So that was an obligation. So this is a good point. Generally, we don't do that. But also, it's likely that Yosef was never buried. As an Egyptian ruler, he probably was just mummified in a casket of some sort, right? So they would have brought that, but not necessarily buried in a typical sense.
Mm-hmm.
So they traveled from Sukkos and they came to the edge of the desert, and Hashem is guiding them with this miraculous pillar of smoke, or a pillar of fire, or a cloud, to guide them through the day by night, and it never ceased to be there with them. One of the protections. Chapter 14 begins with Vayidaber Hashem el Moshe lemor, speak to Bnei Yisrael and they shall return. The first test to Bnei Yisrael. And as we spoke about, this is all about a training to become people who are able to be themselves, who grow to be strong. And every step is another growth. And you can't jump to the end because you break. Any challenge that we give ourselves or anything that we want to become better at, we have to learn step by step, slowly by slowly. If we try and jump to the end, if somebody has never run and they try running a full marathon, it's not going to end well, right? You have to train for that and slowly start building up stamina bit by bit to get there. And so this is what's going on. The training of Bnei Yisrael in their understanding of self and understanding of their place in the world and their place in relation to Hashem is happening throughout this story. So Hashem says, it's time to turn back. It's time to turn back and face the biggest challenge that you've had. The biggest challenge you had were your captors. It's time to face them. Time to turn back and Bnei Yisrael follow. What an amazing thing. They see that they are heading backward in the most illogical thing to do. And that awakens in Paro something. Oh, look, they are lost. They are stumbling. They don't know where they're going. It's time to get them back. And so Paro says, they are lost in the land. The desert has scared them off. That closed off in front of them. And Hashem says, and I will harden the heart of Paro to come and chase you. And indeed, so it happened. The messengers came to Paro saying, look, they're lost. It's time. What did we do that we let them go? We need this is our economy. This is what we need. How can they go? And they got their battle ready soldiers, and they went out 600 riders. Now, if you think about it, there's 1,000 people, 1,000 able-bodied men from 20 to 60, right? To face off each one rider, and they get petrified. That's classic, because they are slaves, and that's what the Ibn Ezra says over here, is the idea of training them to face that and learn to have faith in Hashem, who has done miracles for them to this point, to bring them forth to a point of ultimate redemption. And so we get to Sheni, where Hashem says, okay, Paro is going to chase you, and Bnei Yisrael yotzim biyad ramah, the end of verse 8, and Bnei Yisrael are walking forward completely confident. The yad ramah, with a lifted power hand, they are not afraid. So actually, as we'll see, they start getting afraid, but the anxiety starts getting to them, but not to all. It seems like there were 4 groups, the Midrash tells us, if you look at the verses, 4 groups of people: those that were strong, those that were melting away, and those that wanted to fight, and those that wanted to move forward. And so this is true whenever we have this within ourselves. We may have these 4, the ones that there's the fight, there's the flight, there's the petrified and frozen in fear, and there's the complaining, like, wait, why is this happening to me? This message of this story, of this section of the story, is to teach us that we have to be able to face this and learn within our own life to face the fears and to know that we are going to do what's right and ultimately the good will happen. So the Egyptians chase after them, and in verse 10, Paro and his crew get close to Bnei Yisrael, and they lift up their eyes and they become very afraid, and they call out to Hashem. This is the first time they get to operate as free people praying to Hashem. What an amazing moment. The first thing as they become fearful, they recognize that they have a God who is their protector. There's a mission that they have, and they realize that they have a relationship with the divine enough that they can call out to Hashem and say, Hashem, we're in trouble again. Please help us. Now, there's some don't turn to Hashem, or rather they turn to Moshe. Verse 11. Are there a shortage of graves in Mitzrayim? Right? They may come from New York and biting sarcasm. Are there no graves in Egypt that you had to take us out here to die in the desert? But again, this is fear, totally giving up. We're about to die. Why do we have to? What was all that about? If we were going to die anyhow, we can die in Egypt. Why do we have to die here? And here, verse 12 is so telling. This is what we've been saying to you, Moshe. We never wanted to go with you. You stirred the pot. We were happy the way it was. We were happy the way it was. And you got us into all this mess. And this will come up again and again, that some of them have a hardship of getting out of the slave mentality and knowing, you know what, it's the way it is, but it's it's good. And we talked about this a couple of weeks ago about the sevel, about the savlanut. The sevel of Mitzrayim was the patience or the willingness to accept, to just bear the situation. And this is what it is. This is what it is. Look, we're in Egypt. We're the lowest caste of people. Leave it. Why are you trying to break the system? And sometimes that's the way it is. People don't want to see the opportunities to make it better if we can only stand up and do it right. In 13, Moshe's response to all these three groups, or three responses. Vayomer Moshe la'am al tira'u. Number one, do not be afraid. Do not be afraid, because fear, right? Nothing to fear but fear itself. Fear is what is holding us back, and we have to not be afraid. Hityatzvu. Number two, be firm. Stand firm. This is not amod, to stand, but hityatzev, to be firm. That's a very firm stance. And then you will see, if you cannot be afraid, if you can be strong and firm, you will see the salvation of Yisrael that Hashem will bring about. Ru'ues Yeshuas Hashem asher yasa lachem hayom, that He will do today. Ki asher isam es l'tzayim elam t'sifur lo yisam ad olam. You will not see them again like you see them today. This is the last time you will see the might of Egypt that's about to fold. Hashem yilachem lachem. Hashem will battle for you. You're not ready to battle yourselves. You came out with all this warfare. You don't know how to use it yet. You don't have the strength of character to use it yet. You don't even have the strength to know who you are yet. Some of you calling out to Hashem, and that's powerful. Hashem will respond and battle for you. And Hashem's response is, don't call out to me, move forward. Go take steps forward for yourselves. You have to do an act. And this is powerful because Moshe as well. Hashem didn't just split the sea. Hashem says, put your hand out over the sea. We have to know that we have to take steps and action within our lives to move forward. And then Hashem will bring about the success within our actions. We have to recognize that we can ensure success within what we do. We can only ensure ourselves taking part in the effort. And that is our part. That is what we need to do. Take part in the effort, and then the results will be blessed by Hashem. The waters split in verses 19, 20, and 21, and the land, the soil starts getting muddy, and it's difficult for the Egyptians to chase them. In verse 25, their carriages are falling apart from this from the mud, and the wheels coming off their wagons, their chariots, and the Egyptians say, "Let us run, for the God that took us out in 10 plagues is fighting for them here as well." But it was too late.
Rabbi,
yeah,
I've heard a couple opinions that say that when the sea split, it wasn't like, like in Prince of Egypt or whatever, like, or the Ten Commandments movie where it just suddenly goes up and, into some massive, crazy columns, and it was more of, it looked more almost natural when it happened, and it looks like I think it's verse 20 maybe, maybe verse 22, but that there was a strong east wind that blew all night. So was this process of splitting the sea an hours-long process, not just like a one moment?
Correct. And the verses over here, as you pointed out, verse 21, Moshe put his hand over the water, and a strong wind, right, an east wind came throughout the entire night, and it dried up a section of the sea, but creating a wall on both sides. So it's not just that it dried up the path, but it also created a wall. So in that way, the imagery is correct, that it was a wall. It wasn't just, it dried and split. But actually, as the verse says in 22, and the water is actually a wall. So some of it congealed on the sides. Now, exactly how that looked, it's interesting to try and learn what the miracles look like, but my memory has faded a little exactly of the imagery. But what the
Rabbi?
verse, yes, Sonny Marie?
I had a question. So I always understood this part, that actually no one was willing to go forward, and I forget his name, but I want to say
Nachshon.
Yeah, so he walked forward until it was right where he could no longer breathe. So it seems like this verse contradicts that idea.
Which
or
verse?
Maybe it doesn't. This idea that Moses
The water splitting through the night. So
Yeah.
actually the part that you're referring to is back in verse 15. In 15 is where, before the wind comes, Hashem says, "Speak to Bnei Yisrael, vayiso, and they shall move forward." And everybody looked at each other like, "Where?" It's the water, right? And people were hesitating to take that first step until Nachshon ben Aminadav walked forward and took the challenge, not knowing what the result would be, and keeps on walking in until it reached Ba'umayim ad nafesh, the verse says. The water had come up to a point that, as you said, that they could, he could no longer breathe. And that's when this wind starts coming, and that's when it starts splitting. So the initial action of that show of faith and the act that we have to do, even though it looks like it's insurmountable. And that's often the case when we look at the challenges and say, like, this is not something we can do. Okay, it's not. But as the well-known Mishnah in Avo says, it is not our job to complete the work, but we are not free to hold back from doing it. And that's really every person's part. And Nachshon showed this people that were still hadn't learned to have courage, take the step and go in and move forward. And when they did, that began the process. And that's the initial point. And thank you, Sonia Marie, for pointing that out. Where at first Hashem says, before the splitting of the sea, go ahead and walk in. That's the initial point where after that, the sea begins to split through this process, as Spencer pointed out, the night-long process of the wind blowing and drying it out and creating these walls, and the Bnei Yisrael walking through it on dry land. And that's in verse 28 and 29. Bnei Yisrael walked through on dry land. It dried it up through the night, and they could walk through without getting muddy. And but those walls collapsed behind them on the Egyptians as they were coming through. In verse 30, Vayosha Hashem bayom hu et Yisrael miyad Mitzrayim. And that is the day that Hashem saved or assisted, helped Bnei Yisrael from the Egyptians. And the Israel, for the first time, were able to look at their slave masters, to look at the concentration camp guards. If you just imagine what that's like, people who had been enslaved and killed and maimed for generations, looking at the people that did this to them, and that they are finally free at last. 31, Vayar Yisrael v'yad hagdola asher asa Hashem b'Mitzrayim. And they recognize the hand of Hashem in this. Vayira'am es Hashem, and they were in awe, fearing Hashem. They believed they now had faith in Hashem. Uva Moshe avdo, in Moshe's servant. They recognized not only that Hashem is there for them to change the events and course of history so that goodness can come forth, so that light will outshine that darkness, so that the growth can happen in Bnei Yisrael, in these humans, to become humans themselves, to see their own worth and to see their own strength and ability to move forward. And they believed in Moshe as their leader. And here we come to the song of Moshe. And it begins with a future tense. As then, Yashir Moshe will sing. And it's obviously odd. It should say, as Shar Moshe, then Moshe sang. So Rashi from the Midrash points out that this is taking us to the moment. It's taking us into that moment. As in that moment, Moshe is about to sing. Moshe has the inspiration. It's taking us to the moment of inspiration, which is heart. And this is a very powerful thing. Rashi says it wants to teach us about that song in Shira, the idea to recognize goodness and to be elevated by the goodness requires a sense of heart and thoughtfulness, an intentionality. And that's where it's taking us, to that moment of intentionality. Rashi says, Allah belibo sheyashir shira. It rose up in his heart to sing song. And that's an important part of the song, for us to understand that this is not reflexive. This is intuitive. When we see something great and we take it into thought, and we allow ourselves to be impacted, so that we are inspired, where our heart can now come to a place of inspiration and song. That's the moment that the Torah wants to take us to not to the song itself yet, but to the moment as Yashir Moshe, when Moshe is ready to sing, where is inspired, where there's an Allah b'libo, there's an elevation in his heart to bring that song forth, because that's the meaning of the song. It's not just nice poetry. It's where you allow yourself to be taken by moments that are great, by seeing the hand of Hashem, by seeing the goodness that comes forth, allowing yourself to grow with that. That's what the song is. Before I go to a few points of the song, I want to skip ahead to verse 19 and 20, where Miriam, it brings forth the song as well. And Miriam is titled there Hanaviah, the prophetess. Why? It doesn't say Az Yashir Moshe Hanavi, Moshe the prophet. It says Az Vatikach Miriam Hanavi Achot Aaron et Hatof Biada, took the drums, tambourines, cymbals, whichever percussion instrument it was, and she brought all the women with her, betupim mecholot. And Rashi asks a basic question: where'd they get the instruments? Where'd they get the instruments? And Rashi says, this is the inspiration. The faith of these righteous women to know we need to bring instruments of song because miracles will happen and there will be a moment for that song. That's what Rashi says. So we have to see the entire scene before we enter the song to see what's going on. Moshe has this inspiration of song, Allah belibo, to sing a song. But the prophetess has already foreseen this and brought the instruments to make that song, to accompany that song, to make it a song dance, as the verse says there. This is what's going on. This is the faith and the prophecy to bring forth the idea of the joy of the moment, but really the inspiration and the knowledge that goodness will come. And the song goes like this: Ashira Lashem ki ga'o ga'a. I will sing to Hashem for ga'o ga'a. One is a teaching that I learned from one of my primary teachers, Rav Reuven Leuchter, on the idea of ga'a, of haughtiness, of being a ga'ava. Hashem, let's sing to Hashem, for he is ga'a, for he is haughty. Seems like a bad translation, right? What does it mean for God is haughty of haughtiest? So what does it mean to be haughty? So when we think of it first as like, I'm greater than you. So he said it's actually deeper than that. It's all you see is a little bit. There's much more to me than even you can see. That's haughtiness. So when you praise someone and you say, oh, that was really good, and you're like, I can do much better than that, right? That's nothing for me. That's haughtiness. There's only one that actually that's accurate. And that's with Hashem. When the recognition of Moshe and Miriam and the people have at that moment is, oh, what we saw miracles in Egypt, we see miracles at the sea, and we can see and understand that that's just a little bit of the grace and the care and the omnipotence of Hashem. That's ga'ava. That's ga'a. Hashem is the real ga'a, because there's so much more than what we can see. Verse 2, Azi v'zimraska. Hashem is my might and my song. Those seem to be totally unrelated things. How is that part of the prose? It's like a single phrase. Azi v'zimraska. My strength and my song is God. Strength is a very powerful thing, right? Strength is power. But it's a powerful thing because it can be used well and very destructively. And it is only good when it is a part of song, when it fits, when it's in harmony with the rest of it. Right? Forte is only good when that's the appropriate note and the appropriate way to sing that piece. The strength of it is appropriate when it's appropriate. Right? In music, you have to know when it's mezzo, when it's forte, what are you ready to sing? So Uzi, my strength, the zimras, when it's in harmony with it, that's when it's good, and that's ka, because if I'm in harmony, if I utilize the powers that I have, then it comes from Hashem. If I am to utilize my strength in a good way, that is my neshama. My strength and my song come from God. The ability for me to be a harmonious person, where I use all of my tools that Hashem has granted me in strength and in mellowness, in kindness and in sternness. That's the song, the beauty, the harmony of the tune. And that is ka, that is my relationship with the divine that allows me to balance as a human being. And therefore, Zekeli, this is my God, my strength, the Anivahu. So Anivahu, in the Hoshanas, we say, in the prayers of Sukkot, we say Hoshana, and we say Anivahu Hoshiana. Hashem saves us, Hashem helps us, Anivahu, me and him. It is in that partnership, the Anivahu, and it is I and him. In the simple reading, it actually means the Anivahu, and I will be his host home. I will be a naveh to Hashem. I will be a palace of Hashem, naveh sha'anam, right? I will be va'anvehu. I will be his a palace for him. That's the anivahu, me and God. If I want to be able to be strong in the world, face challenges with strength, face down my murderers and my oppressors, but not become attacking vicious people. Still maintain my kindness and goodness. I want to be able to have that. I want to strength, but I also want to have kindness. How do I balance that? Zimras, that's my song. It has to be in harmony. How do I do that? Va'anvehu, when I can see it's me and God. I don't have to fix the world. I don't have to finish things. I have to do my part and let Hashem do the rest. That faith of I'm going to do my part, I'm going to do it well, and ultimately the goodness will come through because Hashem wills it so. Then I can have harmony in my strength. It's Anivahu. Then I become the host to the divine. I become the nave to the divine. And more, the Midrash says, one step further on the meaning of the word va'anvehu. I will become his naveh, which is na'eh, make it beautiful, noi, adornment. When somebody has a balance of character, when somebody has the ability to stand up for goodness, but can do it in song, can do it in a harmonious way where they bring along people, and they make the world beautiful. They make their representation of the divine beautiful. So the three steps of this word, Anvehu, Anivahu, I'm going to partner with the divine. Anvehu, I will become the home. I will allow that to penetrate in me and be and I'm going to host the divine. And then I will represent it in a beautiful way. The Anvehu. Okay, the song has a lot of words. Yes, Aki.
Rabbeinu Art Scroll translated as "I will build him a sanctuary."
Yeah, but it doesn't say build him a sanctuary. All right, it's Anvehu. I will be the sanctuary. An-naveh, right? The aleph is not I will build it, but I will be that sanctuary.
What you say makes sense, but I think I'm pointing out, to me, the art scroll is misleading. It misses everything of the depth of what you're saying.
This is when we talk about translations, they all often suggest that we look at 5, 6, 7 different translations and try and see it, because you can only do that much in a translation. Like, try and encapsulate one meaning of the word, but you can't get all the depth in a translation. So when you see multiple translations, sometimes you can see the depth. But you're right. Hebrew is a very rich language, and you're not always going to get even surface level depth with a simple translation. Unfortunately, if we're going to get to the rest of the songs, the rest of the parts, we're also going to need to leave you some homework. Read the rest of the song before Shabbos and give yourself the beauty of it. And read it, as Aki pointed out, with various translations, so you can get a deeper sense as well. Miriam responds as well with the song and dance and with the music. Verse 22. Vayasa Moshe es Yisrael miyam suf vayetzu el midbar shur. Moshe pushes the people forward. There's multiple ideas of why they didn't want to leave. And the one, they're getting the spoils of the sea. There's gold and silver from the Egyptian soldiers that had been, they come out in their regalia, and now they can get that. But there's something deeper as well. The spoils of the sea is they're in this enormous moment. Not only are they entirely free, they finally see they're free, and the captor is brought down. You think of like the Nuremberg trials. Like it's the moment where you're vindicated and you see the evil falling and collapsing. It's a very powerful moment, and it's hard to walk away from that. But even more than that, they sensed a relationship with God, with Hashem, in a way that they didn't want to leave. They wanted to be able to take that along. And it's sort of like at the end of Yom Kippur, sometimes you feel you're in such you need to eat, but it's an elevated day, and you're feeling like the day was real, and you really reached an inner point of real deep meaning and a good place, and then you have to go back to the regular, and it's hard to want to go. And that's Vayasa Moshe. Moshe says, okay, we've got to go. Come on, guys. We got to move forward, right?
Rabbi?
Yes, Anya.
So a couple times you've sort of referenced the Shoah through this conversation. I'm wondering if there's ever any sort of guilt of survival or like inability to move forward, if some of the behavior that comes up can be attributed to that, or the fact that they're not moving. I mean, I just looking at that, I mean, you've brought that parallel up quite a few times. And I mean, many survivors ended up committing suicide even when they were free because of the immense guilt of those that were left behind.
There are many parallels. I bring it up because it's real in my life, and I think it's real for many. I'm the grandson of survivors, and so is Esther, all grandparents of survivors, and so it's very real. And I think for me to understand even a little bit of what that was like, that's the reality for me. That helps me tap into that. There are many emotions. That's why I said that there are 4 types. The verse seems to indicate 4 types of people facing this challenge. And it may very well be, Sonny Marie, that the Vayasa, the difficulty moving forward was because I can't believe that I survived this. I can't believe that, not the amazing fortune, but the difficulty. Like, wait, I'm leaving all that behind. So it's hard to go into the psyche of it all, for sure. And that may very well be a part of it. Good point. Thanks for sharing that. In any case, they travel for 3 days and they don't find water. And that's a difficulty. One of the difficulties that's going to come up again and again is the need to care for yourself, which a slave never has to do, right? You're cared for, not cared for, but whatever you get from the good graces, as it were, of the master, right? The water, the bread, and so on. And this comes up here. They say, like, what are we supposed to drink, Moshe? Right? They have asked almost like an innocent question. Vayilona al Moshe lemor in verse 24. And they say, what are we supposed to drink? The water is bitter. When we find water finally after 3 days and it's bitter, what are we supposed to drink? In a sense, they have faith. They know that God's going to make it good, but are we supposed to drink this? Are we supposed to wait and move forward and find something else? Like, what are we supposed to do? What are we supposed to drink? They don't have a sense of action to fix something that's broken to make it work. So Hashem teaches them. They call out to Hashem. Vayitzak el Hashem, 25, Moshe calls. And it doesn't say, and Hashem showed him a tree or a piece of wood, but rather vayorehu, Hashem taught him. Like moreh, yoreh, not yareh, not shown, but taught. This is a lesson in do your part and it'll come. Vayoreh Hashem eitz vayashlech al hamayim, they threw it into the water and the water became sweet. And sometimes bitterness is fixed by work, by another bitter pill, and then it becomes sweet. That's the first lesson that they have. It's difficult, it's not right, you need to fix it, and that sometimes takes work. And that's the lesson that they were taught there. Sham sam lo chok mishpat. There they were taught that lesson, the lesson of the need to do your part to fix it. And there they were tested. And Hashem says to them, this is a life lesson. Listen, heed the voice of God. Don't try and overdo. Don't try and cheat. Don't try and take what's not yours, but work diligently and honestly. Hayashar be'enav ta'aseh. Do what's upright. Be honest. Be careful. Then you will heed the mitzvahs and guard the statutes, and then all that evil that came from Mitzrayim will not come to you, for I am Hashem, your healer. Hashem is telling him, this is part of the healing. And the healing has to come from lessons. And here's the first teaching you need to have. Be upright. Work diligently. Work hard. Don't cheat. Don't steal. Don't try and take what someone else's, but put in a fair effort. If something's broken, try and fix it. And then you will not know all of the difficulties that you've suffered in Egypt. All of the difficulties that came in Egypt will not come upon you. And they come, and the next place they come, they find indeed palm orchards, palm trees, and fruits, and they rested there. They found an oasis. It's time to move on, and they don't have what to eat. And look at verse 3. This is in chapter 16, verse 3, which is so telling to the slave mentality that they were struggling with. Verse 3, Vayomru alehem, and they say to Moshe and Aaron, what are we supposed to eat? Mi yitain museinu b'yad Hashem be'eretz Mitzrayim. If only we would have died by the hand of God in Egypt. So first of all, they say, Moshe, you're not a messenger of God anymore. You're taking us into the desert. We don't know whether you are acting in the name of Hashem anymore. We believed in you then. We don't believe in you now anymore. You're taking us through this crazy desert. What kind of route are you taking? A. B, I'd rather die the hand of God. Really, the hand of God? Not the hand of the Egyptians? Yeah. look, this is what it is. That's the place God gave us, and they were willing to accept it, that they're being the lowest caste in society. It was, that's the lot Hashem has given us, and we're willing to accept that. And then, we didn't starve there. B'shivteinu al sir habasar. We sat next to a pot of meat. We didn't get to eat that. We ate the bread. B'achleinu lechem lasova. All we got to eat was bread, but we knew there was meat around. It's a very fascinating mentality of, I don't get what the better people get, but at least it's available, right? We live in this, there's so much there. And we're willing to accept that rather than the struggle of freedom in the desert where we have to fend for ourselves, we have to feed ourselves, we have to take care of it. And this is the lesson for them as well. Vayomer Hashem al Moshe, in verse 4, Hashem says to Moshe, I'll make something miraculous for them. It'll rain bread from heaven, the man. And it'll come 6 days of the week. And the first lesson you're going to have is Shabbat. It'll come 6 days and one day it won't, because you have to know that you have to connect with the divine one day a week, because it doesn't come on its own. The blessings you get during the week come from the bracha of Shabbos. Rest on Shabbos, connect with Hashem on Shabbos, make Shabbos your important day, because it's not going to come on Shabbos. 6 days a week, it'll come. Work diligently. And on Shabbos, take the rest. It won't come. Another lesson, and this is the fascinating thing of the bread. In verse, let's see, verse 18, 17. So in 16, it said everybody should take an omer, a certain measure per person. And Bnei Yisrael did that. But some people took more and some people took less. There are two types of ailments that would come after someone who has been a slave and now has to learn to fend for themselves. People who came from out of Soviet Russia or from African countries where there was famine and they were brought to either Israel or wherever it was, sometimes they as soon as they saw food, they put it in their pocket. They were sneaking away because they didn't know if they would have any tomorrow. So you have to save it. To grow out of that, Hashem says, no, just that measure, no more. To us, that ailment is not hiding a little food for tomorrow, but taking what's not mine, the taking more than I need. I have plenty, I want more. I want what you have. More and more and more. The first lesson is, no, don't. And in fact, no matter how much they took, in verse 18, they came home, it was the exact measure of an omer. And then there's somebody else who says, you know what? I don't want to have to work. I'm just going to take a little bit. And so some took a little bit. I put a little in my basket and came home, and it ended up in omer. Right? So the other extreme is someone who says, I don't want to have to work. I'm not motivated to do my part. Hashem says, nevertheless, you will end up with the same, but nevertheless do your part and take an exact omer. And this is a lesson for us and for our understanding of how to see ourselves in the world. Hashem wants us to do our part, but to do it within what's upright, to value that others need as well, to value that we must do our part, and to do so in a way that shows the faith that if I do what's right, the blessing will come in the best way. Shabbos reminds us that being honest in commerce and in business and in interactions with others, being fair, reminds us is the outcome of that. We're out of time. Another piece of homework: read the water story and the merit of Miriam that brought them life sustenance throughout their stay in 40 years in the desert.